You are listening to Crazy HOA Life. The HOA tried to weaponize towing. You are making this easy for me. Karen barked at the tow driver to drop the wheel lift and take me anyway. I was still holding my coffee. The wheel lift was already under my rear axle, the hydraulic arm locked in, the amber strobes painting my driveway in flashes of orange panic. I had not even seen the notice. Colleen Smith stood 3 feet away with her phone aimed at my face like a weapon, her red light jacket soaking up the drizzle, her pixie cut flattened against her forehead. She had a zip tie bundle in her other hand, brandishing it like proof of something. I live in Reston, Virginia, in a sprawling townhome cluster managed by the Briarwood Property Owners Association, a community where the online portal is full of car photos and accusations. I work as an IT compliance auditor, which means I speak in policies and logs, and I can smell a process violation from a mile away. This one reeked. The tow driver glanced at me, then at Colleen, then back at his clipboard. He said nothing. Colleen stepped closer, her voice rising. This is a fire lane violation and a guest permit violation, and you have been warned twice already. I had not been warned once. I opened my mouth to say that, but she cut me off. I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized, she said, jabbing her finger toward the orange reflective marker she had planted at the curb the night before. That marker was not there yesterday morning. I would have noticed. I notice everything. It is part of my job. I document anomalies. I track changes. I flag inconsistencies. This was all 3. I set my coffee on the hood. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the voice recorder. Colleen saw the movement, and her smile stretched wider. Go ahead and record, she said. I have documentation for every single code you have broken this month. She held up the zip tie bundle like it was a trophy. These are the ties I cut off your guest pass last week when you left it in the wrong zone overnight. I never had a guest pass. I never applied for one. I never needed one because my car has the resident decal on the windshield, a bright yellow sticker with the Briarwood logo that I paid $40 for at move-in 6 months ago. I pointed at the decal. Colleen did not even look. That decal expired, she said flatly. The new decals are blue. The wheel lift tightened with a hydraulic hiss. The driver leaned out again. Ma'am, he said to Colleen, if he has a valid decal, I cannot tow without an authorization signature from the association. Colleen pulled a folded paper from her jacket pocket and handed it up to him. He unfolded it, squinted, and nodded. She had the signature. She had the form. She had the orange reflective marker. She had the photos. She had me. The drizzle picked up, fat drops spattering my hoodie. I pulled the hood tighter and stepped under the narrow eave that runs along the front of my unit. Colleen followed, still filming. The tow driver stayed in the cab, filling out something on his tablet. I asked Colleen when the decal policy changed. She said it changed in January. I said it was February now and I had not received any notice. She said the notice went out in December via the resident portal, and that failure to check the portal was not an excuse. I opened the portal app on my phone right there. My battery was at 18% because I had been recording video clips all week to document the escalating harassment. The app loaded slowly. I navigated to announcements. The most recent post was from November, and it was about holiday trash pickup. I turned the screen toward Colleen. She glanced at it and shrugged. You probably have notifications turned off, she said. That is your problem, not mine. I tapped through settings. Notifications were enabled. I scrolled through my email. Nothing from Briarwood. Nothing about decals. Nothing about fire lanes. Nothing about guest permits. Colleen leaned in, her face inches from mine, and said very slowly, I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry. That line stuck in my head like a splinter. I knew she meant it. Colleen runs the landscaping committee, which somehow gives her authority over parking enforcement, code compliance, and vendor contracts. I had seen her name on every notice posted in the mailbox cluster. I had seen her in the neighborhood group chat, painting other residents as menaces and hazards for leaving trash cans out 10 minutes past collection time. I had seen her recruit complaints like a campaign, standing at the mailbox cluster with a stack of printed photos, pointing at cars and demanding neighbors report violations. The community had become a surveillance state with Colleen as the chief enforcer. The portal was full of car photos and accusations. Somebody parked in guest overflow overnight. Somebody left a trailer hitch in. Somebody had a work van with a logo. Every photo had Colleen's username attached. The tow driver climbed out of the cab and walked over. He was a big guy in a stained reflective vest, his boots splashing through puddles. He looked at me with something like pity. "I need to take the vehicle," he said quietly. "If you want to dispute this, you call the association." I asked where they were taking it. He gave me the name of a tow yard off Route 7, about 4 miles away. I asked how much to get it out. He said $275 for the tow, $50 per day storage starting tomorrow, and a release fee of $60 if I could not provide proof of ownership and valid registration on the spot. I had all of that. I had my registration in the glove box. I had my insurance card. I had my license. I had the yellow decal on my windshield. None of it mattered because Colleen had the authorization form. The car lifted. The rear tires came off the pavement with a lurch. The front tires stayed down. The whole thing tilted backward at a sickening angle. My coffee mug slid off the hood and shattered on the driveway. Colleen laughed. She actually laughed. The tow driver walked back to the cab and started the engine. I stood there under the eave watching my car disappear down the street, amber strobes fading into the gray drizzle. My phone buzzed. Low battery warning. 15%. I turned off the recording to save power and went back inside to grab my keys, my wallet, and my work laptop bag. I had a meeting in 2 hours and no transportation. I opened a rideshare app. Surge pricing. $32 to get to the office. I closed the app and called my coworker Luis, who lives one neighborhood over. He said he could pick me up in 20 minutes. I used those 20 minutes to pull up every email, portal post, and PDF I had saved from Briarwood since move-in. I archive everything. It is a reflex. I found the move-in packet. I found the decal receipt. I found the parking rules attachment. It was a 3-page document dated August of last year. It listed yellow decals as valid through December of the following year, which meant mine was good until December of this year. It said guest permits were optional for overnight guests parked in designated guest zones. It said fire lane restrictions applied only to marked red curbs and posted signage. My spot had neither. It was a standard parking space in front of my unit, part of the cluster assigned to my building. I screenshot everything and emailed it to myself with a timestamp. Luis pulled up in his sedan and honked. I grabbed my bag and ran out. The drizzle had turned into steady rain. I climbed into the passenger seat and immediately started talking. Luis is a good listener, which is why I trust him. He also deals with compliance documentation at work, so he understands the value of a paper trail. I laid out the whole situation while he drove: the tow, the missing notice, the expired decal claim, the orange reflective marker, Colleen's threat, the authorization form. Luis nodded along, then said something that changed the trajectory of the whole mess. He said, "You need to get the meeting minutes. If they change the decal policy, it has to be in the board minutes. That is a material rule change. They cannot enforce it without a recorded vote and resident notification." That made sense. I pulled up the Association Management Company website on my phone. Briarwood contracts with a regional property management firm that handles the day-to-day operations, collects dues, and supposedly enforces the rules fairly. The management company website had a document portal. I logged in with my resident credentials. The most recent board meeting minutes were from October. I downloaded the PDF and skimmed it while Luis navigated through traffic. Nothing about decals, nothing about parking, nothing about fire lanes. The October minutes were 2 pages of budget line items and landscaping contract renewals. I went back further. September minutes, August minutes, July minutes. Nothing. Luis dropped me off at the office. I thanked him and promised to buy him lunch later. I walked into the building soaking wet, my hoodie dripping, my earbuds tangled around my neck. My manager took one look at me and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine and went straight to my desk. I had a compliance audit due by end of week and no mental bandwidth to deal with HOA nonsense, but I could not focus. Every time I opened a spreadsheet, I saw Colleen's face, her smug grin, her phone camera aimed at me like a weapon. I pulled up my personal email and drafted a formal dispute letter to the Briarwood board. I kept it short and factual. I cited the move-in packet. I cited the parking rules attachment. I requested a copy of the meeting minutes that authorized the decal policy change. I requested a refund of the tow and storage fees. I CC'd the management company and sent it. An hour later, I got a reply from the management company. It was a boilerplate response. Thank you for your inquiry. Your concerns have been forwarded to the appropriate committee for review. Please allow 5 to 7 business days for a response. I did not have 5 to 7 business days. The storage fees started tomorrow. I called the tow yard. The guy who answered said I could pick up the car anytime if I paid the tow fee and provided proof of residency and valid registration. I asked if the authorization form Colleen had given them was on file. He said it was. I asked if I could get a copy. He said he could not release that without written permission from the authorizing party. I asked who the authorizing party was. He said Colleen Smith, Landscaping Committee Chair, Briarwood Property Owners Association. I hung up and called the management company directly. I got a voicemail. I left a message asking for an urgent callback regarding an unauthorized tow. I did not hear back that day. I finished my work, caught a ride home with Luis again, and spent the evening pulling together every document I had. I printed the move-in packet. I printed the parking rules. I printed my decal receipt. I printed the email thread with the management company. I printed my bank statement showing the dues payments. I put it all in a folder. I also pulled up the neighborhood group chat and started screenshotting. Colleen had been busy. She had posted a photo of my car that morning with the caption, "Another violator towed." If you see this vehicle return without proper decals, report it immediately. The comments were a mix of support and pushback. A few residents thanked her for keeping the neighborhood safe. A few others asked what the violation was. One person, a guy named Marcus, who I recognized from the mailbox cluster, replied with a question mark emoji and the words, "That car has a decal." I saw it last week. Colleen replied within minutes, "Old decals are invalid as of January 1. New policy. Check the portal." Marcus replied, "I checked. There is nothing on the portal." Colleen did not reply to that. Another resident jumped in, "I never got a notice about new decals either. Where do we get them?" Colleen replied, "Contact the management company. It is not my job to handhold every resident through basic compliance." I screenshot the entire thread and saved it to a cloud folder. Then I did something I had been putting off. I went back through my own email and found the original welcome packet from the management company when I moved in. It included the name and contact info for the regional supervisor who oversees multiple HOAs in Northern Virginia. Her name was Patricia Brennan. I drafted an email to her directly, bypassing the management company front desk. I explained the situation in bullet points: unauthorized tow, missing policy notice, contradictory documentation, selective enforcement, harassment via group chat. I attached the screenshots, the move-in packet, the parking rules, and the storage fee invoice I had received via email from the tow yard. I hit send and immediately felt my phone battery drop to 8%. I plugged it in and made myself dinner. While I ate, I started thinking about the orange reflective marker. It was still sitting at the curb in front of my unit. I went outside with a flashlight and crouched down to look at it. It was a standard traffic cone marker, the kind you buy at a hardware store, about 2 feet tall with reflective tape around the top. It had no HOA branding, no official markings, no date stamp. It was just a cone. I took a photo of it, then picked it up and brought it inside. If Colleen wanted it back, she could ask. I set it in my coat closet and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to 3 new emails. The first was from Patricia Brennan. She said she had reviewed my complaint and would be scheduling a call with the Briarwood board president and the landscaping committee chair to discuss the enforcement procedures. She requested that I provide any additional documentation or recordings I had, and she confirmed that the management company should have sent a formal notification to all residents if there was a material policy change. She also said that based on her preliminary review, the tow appeared to have been executed without proper notice, and she would be recommending that the association reimburse me for all fees. The second email was from the tow yard. It was an invoice for the storage fee. $50. Due immediately. The third email was from Colleen. The email from Colleen had no subject line. The body was 2 sentences. You have been scheduled for a compliance hearing on Monday at 10 in the morning. Failure to appear will result in additional fines and a lien on your property. Monday was 4 days away. The hearing was at 10 in the morning on a workday, which meant I would have to take time off. I replied to Patricia and forwarded Colleen's email, asking if this hearing was legitimate and if I was required to attend. Patricia replied within the hour, "The hearing is not legitimate." The board cannot schedule a compliance hearing without notifying the management company and providing at least 10 days written notice per the association bylaws. Do not attend. I will handle this directly with the board. I felt a small surge of relief, but it did not last. An hour later, Colleen posted in the neighborhood group chat again. Reminder that compliance hearings are mandatory for all residents under review. Failure to attend will result in escalated fines and potential legal action. This time, the pushback was immediate. Marcus replied, "Who authorized you to schedule hearings?" Another resident, a woman named Jen, replied, "I got the same email and I am not attending. This is harassment." A third resident chimed in, "I contacted the management company and they said these hearings are not official. Stop abusing your position." Colleen did not reply to any of them. Instead, she posted a new thread 30 minutes later with a photo of a different car, this one parked in a guest spot, with the caption, "Expired inspection sticker. Tow authorized." I called Patricia again. This time she answered on the second ring. I explained the group chat escalation and the new tow thread. She sighed, and I could hear her typing. She said, "I am going to send a cease and desist to Miss Smith today." She does not have the authority to authorize tows, schedule hearings, or issue fines. That authority rests with the board president and the management company, and even then it requires documented notice and due process. She has been acting outside her role for months, and the board has not stopped her, because frankly, they are afraid of her. She runs roughshod over every meeting, and the board president is too passive to push back. I am going to fix that. Patricia told me she would be attending the next board meeting in person, which was scheduled for the following week. She said she would also be conducting a full audit of all parking enforcement actions taken in the last 6 months, including every tow Colleen had authorized. She asked if I could attend the meeting as well. I said I could. She said to bring all my documentation and be prepared to present it to the board. She also said I should expect Colleen to escalate before the meeting because people like her do not back down quietly. She was right. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, I walked out to check my mail and found Colleen holding court at the mailbox cluster. She had a stack of printed photos and was showing them to a group of 4 or 5 residents. I recognized a couple of them. One was an older man named Bill, who lived in the building next to mine. Another was a younger woman named Dana, who had just moved in a month ago. Colleen was in full performance mode, her voice loud and theatrical. She was pointing at the photos and explaining how the neighborhood was being overrun by violators who refused to follow the rules. She said the board was too weak to enforce compliance, and that she was taking matters into her own hands to protect property values. I walked closer. Colleen saw me and her expression shifted from animated to venomous. She held up one of the photos. It was a picture of my car, taken before the tow, with a red circle drawn around the yellow decal on the windshield. She said, "This is what I am talking about." Expired decals, fire lane violations, guest permits in resident spots. The rules exist for a reason, and when people ignore them, the whole neighborhood suffers. Bill nodded along. Dana looked uncertain. I stepped into the circle and said, "That decal is not expired. I have the receipt and the policy document that proves it." Colleen turned to face me fully. "You are not welcome in this conversation," she said. "You are under review for multiple violations, and anything you say can and will be used against you in the hearing." I ignored her and spoke directly to the group. I said, "There is no hearing." The management company confirmed that the landscaping committee has no authority to schedule hearings or issue fines. If you received an email from Colleen threatening fines or legal action, forward it to the regional supervisor. Her name is Patricia Brennan, and her contact info is on the management company website. Colleen stepped toward me, her face flushed. "You do not get to undermine me in front of my neighbors," she hissed. "I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized. You are a menace and a hazard, and I will make sure everyone knows it." Dana spoke up. She said, "I got one of those emails too. It said I had to remove a planter from my patio or face a fine. I called the management company, and they said planters are allowed." Colleen whipped around to face her. "Planters over a certain size require approval," she snapped. "You did not get approval," Dana said. "I did. I submitted the form in January and got an approval email back." Colleen said, "Then you submitted it to the wrong person because I never saw it." Dana said, "I submitted it to the management company like the form said." Colleen did not reply to that. She gathered her photos and walked away, her boots splashing through puddles. Bill lingered for a moment. He looked at me and said, "She is trying to help. The neighborhood was a mess before she got involved." I said, "Helping means following the rules, not inventing new ones and enforcing them selectively." He shrugged and walked away. Dana stayed. She asked if I was serious about the regional supervisor. I said I was and pulled up Patricia's email on my phone. I forwarded it to Dana right there. She thanked me and said she was going to reach out. She also said Colleen had been posting about her planter in the group chat, painting her as a rule breaker and calling for a vote to ban all patio decorations. Dana said she was getting tired of the constant surveillance and the public shaming. I said, "Join the club." That afternoon, I got my car back. Patricia had called the tow yard directly and authorized the release with a full refund of all fees, pending resolution of the board investigation. I took a rideshare to the yard, signed the release paperwork, and drove home. The car was fine. The yellow decal was still on the windshield. The orange reflective marker was still in my coat closet. When I pulled into my spot, I saw a new notice taped to my door. It was a printed form with checkboxes. The box next to fire lane violation was checked. The box next to expired decal was checked. The box next to unauthorized overnight parking was checked. At the bottom, in handwritten block letters, it said, "Final warning. Next violation will result in a lien." It was signed by Colleen. I took a photo of the notice and emailed it to Patricia. She replied within minutes, "This is exactly the kind of overreach I am addressing at the meeting. Do not respond to her. Do not engage. Bring the notice to the meeting." I folded the notice and put it in my folder with the rest of the documentation. Then I went inside and made myself lunch. My phone battery was at 40%. I plugged it in and sat down at my laptop. I had work to finish, but I could not focus. I kept thinking about Colleen's words, "I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry." It was a threat designed to wear me down, to make me give up and move out, or just pay whatever she demanded to make it stop. That is how bullies work. They push until you break. But I had something she did not know about yet. I took the fine notice without flinching, because I knew what it would trigger. If you are enjoying this chaos, hit that like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmare stories. The week crawled by. I kept my head down at work and avoided the neighborhood group chat, though I still screenshot every post Colleen made. She was ramping up. She posted photos of 6 different cars over 3 days, each with a different alleged violation. Guest pass in the wrong zone. Trailer hitch not removed. Commercial vehicle in resident parking. Inspection sticker peeling. License plate frame obstructing the plate number. Every single post ended with the same line, "Tow authorized." The pushback in the comments was growing. More residents were asking where the rules were posted, who authorized Colleen to enforce them, and why the management company was not stepping in. A few people defended her, saying she was protecting property values and that people needed to follow the rules or leave. The community was splitting. On Wednesday, I got a call from Patricia. She said she had completed her preliminary audit and found that Colleen had authorized 23 tows in the last 6 months, all without board approval and most without proper notice to the residents. She said the management company had no record of the decal policy change, no record of the fire lane redesignation, and no record of any formal complaints against the vehicles that were towed. She said it was the most egregious case of committee overreach she had seen in her 15 years with the company. She also said she had sent the cease and desist to Colleen and CC'd the board president, and that Colleen had replied with a 12-page letter defending her actions and accusing Patricia of enabling rule breakers. Patricia said, "The board meeting is tomorrow night at 7. I will be there. You should be there. Bring everything." She also said that Colleen had been trying to rally support by scheduling an emergency landscaping committee meeting the night before the board meeting, and that several residents had already complained to Patricia about being pressured to attend and vote in favor of expanded enforcement powers for the COM. Patricia said she had sent an email to the entire community clarifying that the landscaping committee had no enforcement authority and that any votes taken at the emergency meeting would be invalid. Colleen replied to that email with a single line, "You do not speak for this community. I do." The emergency meeting happened on Wednesday night at 6. I did not attend, but Marcus did. He texted me halfway through. He said Colleen had set up a folding table in the clubhouse and printed out a 20-page slide deck. She spent 40 minutes presenting a case for why the neighborhood needed stricter enforcement, harsher penalties, and a dedicated compliance officer position that she would fill. She showed photos of cars, trash cans, planters, holiday decorations, and mailbox paint colors that she claimed were violations. She handed out a petition asking the board to grant the landscaping committee emergency powers to issue immediate fines and authorize tows without board approval. Marcus said 8 people signed it, 12 people walked out. Colleen declared it a victory. Thursday morning, I woke up to a new post in the neighborhood group chat. Colleen had posted a photo of my car again, this time parked in my assigned spot with the yellow decal clearly visible. The caption said, "This resident continues to flaunt the rules and disrespect the community. He will be removed." The comments exploded. Dana replied, "You have no authority to remove anyone." Jen replied, "This is targeted harassment and I am reporting it to the board." Marcus replied, "You are embarrassing yourself." Colleen did not respond. She just kept posting. Another car photo. Another violation claim. Another tow threat. It was like watching someone spiral in real time. I spent the day preparing for the meeting. I printed every email, every screenshot, every document. I organized it into sections: move-in documentation, parking rules, tow records, group chat harassment, false notices, unauthorized hearings. I put it all in a binder with tabs. I also printed the service report I had been holding on to. It was the trump card. I had not told anyone about it yet, not even Patricia, because I wanted to deploy it at exactly the right moment. The report came from the gate vendor that services the entry gate at the main entrance to the neighborhood. The gate had been malfunctioning for weeks, randomly locking out residents with valid decals and letting through cars without decals. Multiple residents had complained about it in the group chat. Colleen had dismissed every complaint, saying the gate was working fine and that people needed to make sure their decals were properly registered in the system. I had called the gate vendor directly 2 weeks ago and asked for a service history report. The technician I spoke to was surprisingly forthcoming. He said the gate system had been intentionally reconfigured in early January to reject yellow decals and only accept blue decals, but that no blue decals had been issued yet. He said the reconfiguration was done remotely at the request of someone from the landscaping committee, and that the technician who did the work had flagged it as unusual because it would lock out the majority of residents. The service report included timestamps, configuration logs, and the email chain with the landscaping committee. The email came from Colleen. She had ordered the gate reconfigured without board approval, knowing it would create a wave of violations she could enforce. I printed the report and added it to the binder as the final section. Then I grabbed my laptop bag, my keys, and the orange reflective marker I had taken from the curb. I was bringing it to the meeting as a prop. I left my unit at 6:30 and walked to the clubhouse. It was a 5-minute walk. The drizzle had stopped, but the pavement was still wet, reflecting the streetlights in long yellow smears. The clubhouse was a low brick building near the mailbox cluster, with a small parking lot out front. The lot was full. I counted 15 cars. I recognized a few of them. Marcus was there. Dana was there. Bill was there. Colleen's car was parked in the spot closest to the entrance, an orange reflective marker standing at the curb like a sentry. I walked inside. The meeting room was set up with folding chairs in rows facing a folding table where the board members sat. Patricia was standing near the table talking to the board president, a middle-aged man named Ron who looked exhausted. Colleen was sitting in the front row with her zip tie bundle in her lap and a stack of printed photos on the chair next to her. She saw me and her expression hardened. She stood up and walked over. "You are not allowed to be here," she said. "This is a closed board meeting." Patricia turned and said, "He is allowed. I invited him." Colleen said, "You do not have the authority to invite anyone." Patricia said, "I do, and you do not have the authority to bar residents from attending a board meeting. It is in the bylaws." Colleen opened her mouth to argue, but Ron cut her off. He said, "Colleen, sit down. We are starting." The meeting started 10 minutes late because people kept arriving. By 7:15, the room was packed. 30 residents, maybe more. Ron called the meeting to order and read through the agenda. First item was a budget update. Second item was a landscaping contract renewal. Third item was parking enforcement policies and procedures. Colleen sat up straighter. Patricia stood and addressed the board. She said, "Before we get to the parking item, I need to make a statement. Over the last 6 months, the landscaping committee has been operating outside its authority. It has been issuing fines, authorizing tows, and scheduling compliance hearings without board approval and without following the association bylaws. I have completed an audit of all enforcement actions taken during this period, and I have identified multiple violations of due process, improper notice, and selective enforcement. I am recommending that the board rescind all fines and fees issued by the Landscaping Committee, reimburse affected residents, and formally censure the committee chair. Colleen shot to her feet. "That is an outrageous accusation," she said. "I have done nothing but protect this community from people who think the rules do not apply to them." Patricia said, "You have exceeded your authority. The Landscaping Committee is advisory only. It does not have enforcement powers." Colleen said, "The board gave me enforcement powers." Ron said, "No, we did not. We authorized you to monitor landscaping compliance and report violations to the management company. We did not authorize you to issue fines or authorize tows." Colleen said, "That is because you are too weak to do what needs to be done. I had to step up because no one else would." Ron said, "You overstepped. We are going to fix it." Patricia pulled out a folder and began reading from the audit. She listed every tow Colleen had authorized. She listed every fine Colleen had issued. She listed every hearing Colleen had scheduled. She listed every notice Colleen had posted on doors without board approval. The list took 10 minutes to read. By the end, Colleen was standing with her arms crossed, her face bright red, her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. When Patricia finished, Ron asked if anyone in the audience had additional information. I stood up. I walked to the front of the room and set my binder on the table. I opened it to the first section and began presenting my case. I showed the move-in packet. I showed the parking rules. I showed the decal receipt. I showed the tow invoice. I showed the group chat screenshots. I showed the false notices Colleen had taped to my door. I showed the email thread with the management company. I showed the cease and desist Patricia had sent. I kept my voice calm and factual, exactly like I was presenting a compliance audit at work. When I got to the service report, I paused. I said, "This is a service report from the gate vendor that manages the entry system. It shows that in early January, someone from the Landscaping Committee requested a remote reconfiguration of the gate to reject yellow decals and only accept blue decals, even though no blue decals had been issued. The reconfiguration was done intentionally to create a wave of lockouts that could be classified as violations." The email authorizing the reconfiguration came from Colleen Smith. I held up the report. Patricia took it from me and began reading. Her expression shifted from professional neutrality to visible shock. She looked at Ron. She said, "This is fraud. This is intentional sabotage of association infrastructure for personal enforcement purposes. This is grounds for immediate removal from the committee and possible legal action." The room erupted. Residents started talking over each other. Someone yelled, "I knew the gate was broken." Someone else yelled, "She did this on purpose." Dana stood up and said, "I got locked out 3 times in January, and she told me my decal was expired." Marcus stood up and said, "She told me I needed to buy a new decal for $90. Jen stood up and said, "She told me the gate vendor said my car was flagged in the system." Colleen stood frozen in the front row, her face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Ron banged his hand on the table. He said, "Quiet. Everyone sit down." The room settled. Ron looked at Colleen. He said, "Is this true? Did you order the gate reconfigured without board approval?" Colleen said, "The gate needed to be updated. The old system was not secure." Ron said, "That is not what I asked." "Did you order it reconfigured to reject yellow decals?" Colleen hesitated. Then she said, "Yes. But it was for the safety of the community. We needed to enforce the new decal policy." Ron said, "There is no new decal policy. We never voted on a new decal policy. Colleen said, you should have. I had to take action because the board was too passive. Patricia stood and addressed the board again. She said, based on this evidence, I am formally recommending that Colleen Smith be removed from the landscaping committee immediately, that all fines and fees she issued be rescinded, that all affected residents be reimbursed, and that a clear parking policy be published to the entire community with proper notice and due process. I am also recommending that the board investigate whether any other committees have been operating outside their authority and implement oversight measures to prevent this from happening again. Ron nodded. He said, I move to adopt those recommendations. The other two board members, a woman named Claire and a man named Jeff, both said, seconded. The motion passed unanimously. Colleen exploded. She screamed, you are making a huge mistake. This neighborhood will fall apart without me. I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized. You are all cowards and idiots, and you are going to regret this. Ron stood up. He said, Colleen, you are out of order. You need to leave. Colleen said, I am not going anywhere. This is my neighborhood. Ron said, if you do not leave, I will call the police. Colleen grabbed her zip-tie bundle and her stack of photos and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The room was silent for a moment. Then, someone started clapping. Then, someone else joined. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes. Patricia laid out a timeline for implementing the new parking policy. She said the management company would send a formal notice to every resident within the next week, outlining the rules, the enforcement procedures, and the appeals process. She said any fines issued by Colleen in the last 6 months would be voided, and any fees paid would be refunded within 30 days. She said the gate vendor would be contacted immediately to restore the original configuration and ensure that yellow decals were accepted again. She also said the board would be establishing an oversight committee to review all committee actions going forward and ensure compliance with the bylaws. Ron addressed the room. He said, I want to apologize to everyone who was harassed, fined, or towed unfairly. This should never have happened. The board failed to provide adequate oversight, and we are committed to making sure it does not happen again. We are going to rebuild trust and restore fairness to this community. Several residents thanked him. Dana stood up and asked if Colleen would be held accountable for the money residents had paid in fines and tow fees. Patricia said the management company would be pursuing reimbursement from Colleen directly, and that if she refused to cooperate, the association would take legal action. After the meeting ended, I stayed to talk to Patricia. She thanked me for bringing the service report and said it was the missing piece that made the case airtight. She also said she had already contacted the gate vendor and confirmed that the reconfiguration would be reversed by the end of the week. She asked if I had any other concerns. I said I wanted to make sure Colleen could not retaliate. Patricia said the board had agreed to issue a formal order prohibiting Colleen from contacting me directly or posting about me in the group chat. She said if Colleen violated that order, the association would pursue a restraining order through the courts. I said that sounded good. I walked back to my unit. The air was cold and damp, but the drizzle had stopped completely. The neighborhood felt quieter, like a weight had lifted. When I got to my door, I noticed the orange reflective marker was gone from the curb. I went inside and checked my coat closet. The marker I had taken was still there. Colleen must have come by and removed the one she had planted earlier. I left mine in the closet. I figured I would keep it as a souvenir. I made myself dinner and checked the neighborhood group chat. Colleen had not posted anything since the meeting. Other residents were posting though. Dana posted, "Tonight was amazing. Thank you to everyone who stood up." Marcus posted, "Finally some accountability." Jen posted, "I hope this is the start of real change." The next morning, I woke up to an email from the management company. It was the formal parking policy notification Patricia had promised. The email included a PDF attachment with a clean, simple set of rules. Resident parking spots were clearly defined. Guest parking spots were clearly defined. Fire lanes were marked on a map. Decal requirements were listed with a phase-out schedule. Yellow decals valid through December. Blue decals available starting March. No penalty for using yellow decals until expiration. Tow authorization required written board approval and 48 hours notice to the resident. Fines required a formal hearing with 10 days notice and an appeals process. It was everything the community should have had from the start. I forwarded the email to Luis and Marcus and Dana and a few other residents who had been targeted by Colleen. Everyone replied with relief and gratitude. Luis said he was glad I had fought back. Marcus said he wished he had stood up sooner. Dana said she was thinking about running for the board in the next election. I said she should. The community needed people who understood fairness and due process. Over the next few days, the neighborhood group chat shifted. People stopped posting accusations and started posting helpful information. Someone shared the management company's contact info. Someone else shared a link to the bylaws. Someone organized a cleanup day for the mailbox cluster. It felt like the community was healing. I did not see Colleen for almost 2 weeks. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, I saw her at the mailbox cluster. She was picking up her mail, her face drawn and pale, her movements stiff. She saw me and looked away quickly. She did not say anything. She just grabbed her mail and walked back to her unit. A few days later, I heard from Patricia that Colleen had resigned from the landscaping committee entirely. Patricia said Colleen had submitted a one-sentence resignation letter and had stopped attending board meetings. Patricia also said the association had recovered about 60% of the fines Colleen had collected, and that the remaining residents were being reimbursed out of the reserve fund. The tow yard reimbursed me in full. I got a check in the mail for $325, covering the tow fee, the storage fee, and the release fee. I deposited it and felt a small sense of justice. A week later, the gate vendor finished reconfiguring the entry system. I drove through the gate with my yellow decal, and it opened immediately. No lockout, no error message, no hassle. It felt like a small miracle. I also got a formal letter from the board. It was an apology letter, signed by Ron, Claire, and Jeff. They apologized for the harassment, the unauthorized enforcement, and the failure to provide oversight. They thanked me for bringing the issue to their attention and for helping the community move forward. I framed the letter and hung it in my home office as a reminder that standing up to bullies works, even when the bully has a title and a committee and a stack of printed photos. The neighborhood settled into a new normal. The group chat became a place for actual community conversation instead of surveillance and accusations. The board started holding open meetings where residents could ask questions and raise concerns without fear of retaliation. The management company implemented quarterly audits of all committee actions to ensure compliance with the bylaws. It was not perfect, but it was better. I ran into Marcus at the mailbox cluster a few weeks later. He told me that Colleen had put her townhome on the market. He said she was moving to a different neighborhood, one without an HOA. I said that was probably for the best. Marcus laughed and said she is going to drive her new neighbors crazy within a month. I said maybe, but at least it would not be our problem anymore. We both checked our mail and walked back to our units. The orange reflective marker was still sitting in my coat closet. I thought about putting it out at the curb as a joke, but I decided against it. Some battles are worth fighting. Some trophies are worth keeping. A month after the board meeting, Patricia sent a final email to the community. She said the parking enforcement audit was complete and that all affected residents had been reimbursed. She said the new parking policy was in full effect and that the board had established a clear process for handling violations. She also said the landscaping committee had been restructured with new leadership and a revised charter that limited its role to advisory functions only. She thanked everyone for their patience and cooperation during the transition. She ended the email with a line that made me smile. "The association exists to serve the community, not to police it. That is the standard we are committed to upholding going forward." I printed the email and added it to my binder. I also printed the gate vendor service report and highlighted the section where Colleen had ordered the reconfiguration. I kept the binder in my home office, filed next to my compliance audit folders from work. It felt appropriate. Both jobs involved documentation, accountability, and pushing back against people who thought the rules did not apply to them. The difference was that at work, the stakes were abstract: data breaches, regulatory fines, audit findings. At home, the stakes were personal: my car, my money, my peace of mind. Both mattered. Both required the same approach: gather evidence, stay calm, follow process, and never back down when you are right. I also kept the orange reflective marker. Every time I opened my coat closet and saw it sitting on the floor next to my winter boots, I thought about Colleen standing in the drizzle, brandishing her zip-tie bundle like it was proof of something. I thought about her saying, "I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry." I thought about her face when the board voted to remove her from the committee. I thought about the way she had stormed out of the meeting, still clinging to the belief that she was the only thing standing between the neighborhood and chaos. She was wrong. The neighborhood was fine without her. The neighborhood was better without her. The final piece of the story came a few weeks later, when the board published the meeting minutes from the night of the confrontation. The minutes were posted on the resident portal and included a section titled Parking Enforcement Policy Revision. The section outlined the board's decision to rescind all fines issued by the landscaping committee, reimburse all affected residents, and implement a new enforcement process with proper notice and due process. It also included a statute citation read into the minutes that shuts the threat down, referencing Virginia Code Section 55.1, 1959, which governs HOA enforcement actions and requires written notice, an opportunity to be heard, and a formal board vote before any fine or lien can be imposed. The citation was added at Patricia's recommendation and was now part of the official record, protecting residents from future overreach. The minutes also included a formal resolution prohibiting Colleen from contacting me directly or posting about me in any community forum. The resolution stated that any violation would result in immediate legal action, including a restraining order and potential liability for harassment. It was exactly what Patricia had promised, and it was now official. I printed the minutes and added them to my binder. I also screenshot the section with the statute citation and sent it to Marcus, Dana, and a few other residents who had been targeted by Colleen. Everyone appreciated having the legal backup in writing. It felt like closure. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. Colleen's townhome sold within a month. A young couple moved in, and they seemed friendly. They introduced themselves at the mailbox cluster and asked about the neighborhood. I told them it was a good place to live, that the board was responsive, and that the management company was fair. I did not mention Colleen. I did not mention the towing wars. I did not mention the orange reflective marker sitting in my coat closet. Some stories are better left untold, at least to new neighbors who are just trying to settle in. The funny karma moment came about 6 weeks after the board meeting. Patricia called me with an update. She said the association had completed a full financial audit of the reserve fund and discovered that Colleen had been collecting fines and depositing them into a separate account instead of remitting them to the association. The total amount was over $8,000. Patricia said the association was pursuing legal action to recover the funds, and that Colleen's favorite fee, a $50 administrative processing charge she had been tacking on to every fine, was proven imaginary in the ledger. There was no line item for it in the budget, no board approval for it, and no record of where the money had gone. It had just disappeared into Colleen's personal account. Patricia said the discovery had been forwarded to the county attorney's office for review. I did not follow up on the legal case. I figured it was out of my hands and in the hands of people who get paid to handle fraud investigations. But I did hear through the neighborhood grapevine that Colleen had hired a lawyer and was fighting the charges. Marcus told me she was claiming the fees were legitimate and that the board had given her verbal approval. Patricia told me the board had no record of any such approval and that the case was moving forward. I did not feel sorry for her. She had built a system designed to extract money from residents through fear and intimidation, and now she was facing the consequences. It was the definition of karma. The neighborhood moved on. The HOA stopped selective enforcement after complaints piled up, and the board implemented regular training for all committee chairs to ensure they understood their roles and limitations. The management company started sending monthly compliance reports to the board, summarizing all enforcement actions and flagging any that appeared inconsistent with the bylaws. It was the kind of transparency the community should have had all along. Property values stayed stable. The group chat stayed civil. The mailbox cluster stopped being a performance stage for public shaming. Life returned to normal, or at least as normal as life in an HOA can be. I kept working my job as an IT compliance auditor. I kept archiving emails. I kept documenting anomalies. I kept my orange reflective marker in the coat closet as a reminder that sometimes the best defense against a bully is a well-organized binder and the willingness to stand up in front of a room full of people and present the facts. I also kept the service report from the gate vendor. Every time I looked at it, I thought about the moment I had deployed it at the board meeting, watching Colleen's face drain of color as the room erupted. It was the trump card I had been holding, and it had worked exactly as planned. The board meeting that changed everything happened on a Thursday night in February, but the effects lasted months. The new parking policy became a model for other HOAs in the region. Patricia told me she had been contacted by several other management companies asking for copies of the policy and the enforcement procedures. She said Briarwood had become a case study in how to fix a broken system. I said I was glad something good had come out of the mess. She said, "You made it happen. You stood up when no one else would." I said, "A lot of people stood up. I just had the receipts." The last time I saw Colleen was on moving day. I was walking to my car and saw a moving truck parked in front of her unit. She was standing on the sidewalk directing the movers, her arms crossed, her face hard. She did not look at me. I did not look at her. I just got in my car and drove to work. When I came home that evening, the moving truck was gone. Her unit was empty. The for sale sign was gone. A new family was moving in the next week. The neighborhood had turned the page. I still check the group chat occasionally. It is mostly quiet now. Someone posts about a lost dog. Someone posts about a garage sale. Someone posts a reminder about trash pickup. It is boring and normal and exactly what a neighborhood group chat should be. No accusations. No surveillance photos. No tow threats. No Colleen. The board holds its meetings on schedule. The management company sends its reports. The gate opens when I drive through. My yellow decal is still valid for 10 more months, and when it expires, I will get a blue one with no drama, no lockout, no fine. It is the way it should have been all along. I hope your mailbox cluster stays quiet.